In a previous video, I've read the chapter of Maria Valtorta's vision, which describes how St. Thomas, with Judas Iscariot, first met Jesus. I'm now going to read from part of a chapter, which comes much later, which is chapter 518 of the poem of the Man God, where we have a description of St. Thomas's regret in having brought Judas Iscariot to Jesus. They are still only 11 when they set out again. 11 pensive, shocked faces around the sad face of Jesus, who takes leave of the sisters, and who, after a moment's consideration, says to Simon Zealot and Bartholomew, "You will stay here. You will join me at Tekoa, at Simon's house, or in the house of Nike near Jericho, or at Bethabara, if he should come, and serve charity. Have you understood? Do not worry, Master. We will not be lacking in love for our neighbour in any way," says Bartholomew, assuring him. Just to interrupt the dialogue here, Jesus and the apostles are downcast because Judas Iscariot has failed to meet them at a rendezvous point which had been clearly given to him. And it is known by Jesus, of course, but also suspected strongly by the apostles, the 11 of the remaining apostles, that Judas is up to no good and cannot be relied upon, and his character is going downhill. Jesus continues, "At whatever hour he may arrive, leave at once." "We will, Master, and thanks for trusting us," says the zealot. They kiss one another, and while a servant closes the gate and Jesus goes away, the two apostles go back to the house with the sisters. Jesus is ahead alone. Peter is behind him, between Matthew and James of Alphaeus. Behind them, there is Philip with Andrew, James and John of Zebedee. Last, as silent as the others, come Thomas and Judas Thaddeus. But I'm wrong. Peter is also silent. His two companions exchange a few words, but he, who is between them, does not speak. He proceeds silently, with his head lowered. He seems to be holding a mute conversation with the stones and grass on which he is treading. Also, the last two seem to have the same attitude. The only difference is that while Thomas seems to be engrossed in the contemplation of a tiny branch of willow, which he strips leaf by leaf, and looks at each leaf after detaching it, as if he were studying its light green shade on one side, and the silvery one on the other, or the veins of its designs, Judas Thaddeus is staring straight ahead. I do not know whether he is looking at the view, which after they've crossed over the ridge of a mountain, stretches across the rather indistinct splendour of a plain at dawn, or whether he is only looking at the fair hair of Jesus, who has thrown his mantle back to enjoy the mild December sunshine on his head. And Thomas's occupation and Judas Thaddeus' contemplation of the view, or of the Master, end at the same time. The latter lowers his eyes and turns round looking at his companion, while Thomas, who has reduced his little branch to a riding whip, raises his eyes to look at Thaddeus. A sharp and at the same time kind, sad look, which meets a similar one. "It is so, my friend, just so," says Thomas, as if he were ending a speech. "Yes, it is so. And deep is my grief. Also my love for a relative is involved." Just to interrupt there, Judas Thaddeus is speaking of Jesus, who is his legal cousin. Not actually a blood relative, but that doesn't matter. Alphaeus is the brother of St. Joseph. Alphaeus is the father of 4 men, one of whom is Judas Thaddeus. And so Judas Thaddeus has grown up with Jesus, and this is causing his additional sorrow. Resuming the narrative. Thomas says, "I understand, but you have a torture of love in your heart. But what about me? I have a sense of remorse torturing me, and it is even worse. Remorse? You have no reason for remorse. You are good and loyal. Jesus is pleased with you, and we have never had from you any reason for scandal. So how can you have this feeling of remorse? Thomas responds, from a recollection, the remembrance of the day when I decided to follow the new rabbi who had appeared in the temple. Judas and I were close to each other, and we admired the action and the words of the Master, and we decided to look for him. And I was more decided than Judas, and I almost dragged him. He says the opposite, but it is so. That is my remorse, that I insisted to make him come. I brought an everlasting sorrow to Jesus, but I knew that Judas was loved by many, and I thought that he would be useful. As foolish as all those who can but think of a king of Israel greater than David and Solomon, but still a king as Jesus says that he will never be. I was yearning to have him among the disciples as he might be useful. I was hoping so, and only now I understand. And I understand so more and more how right Jesus was in not accepting him at once. On the contrary, he told me not to look for him. A cause for remorse, I tell you. Remorse. That man is not good. Judas Thaddeus replies, he is not. But do not create occasions of remorse for yourself. You did not act out of malice, so you are not guilty, I tell you. Are you really sure? Or are you saying so to console me? Jude replies, I'm telling you, because it is the truth. Do not think of the past anymore, Thomas. It does not help to eradicate it. Thomas replies, that's easily said. But just think, if because of me some misfortune should befall the Master, I am sick at heart and full of suspicion. I'm a sinner because I'm judging a companion, and my judgment is not merciful. And I'm a sinner because I should believe the words of the Master. He excuses Judas. Do you believe your brother? Judas Thaddeus replies, in everything except that. But don't be distressed. We have all the same thought. Also Peter, who is so worried, strives to think well of that man, and Andrew, who is meeker than a little lamb, and Matthew, the only one among us who does not feel disgust for any sinner, and also the so loving and pure John, who is so lucky that he need not fear evil or vice, because he is so full of charity and purity that he has no room for anything else. And my brother has it too. I mean Jesus. He certainly has other thoughts as well, and thus sees the necessity of keeping Judas until every attempt to make him good becomes vain. Thomas responds, yes, but what will happen in the end? Briefly, do you understand without me telling you? How far will he go? I don't know. Perhaps he will leave us. Perhaps he will stay, waiting to see who is stronger in this struggle, Jesus or the Hebrew world. Thomas responds, nothing else? Do you not think that he is already serving two masters? Judas Thaddeus, that is certain. Thomas, and are you not afraid that he may serve the more numerous group in order to cause complete damage to the Master? Judas Thaddeus, No, I am not. I do not love him, but I cannot believe that he, at least not for the time being, I would certainly be afraid of that if one day the crowd stopped supporting the Master. If instead, a public acclamation should consecrate him king and our leader, I am sure that Judas would abandon everybody for him. He is an exploiter. May God check him and protect Jesus and us all. The two realise that they've slackened their paces and that they've been left far behind their companions, and without speaking any more, they begin to walk fast to join them.